Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Nick Holmsten to the podcast. Nick is a trailblazer at the intersection of music, technology, and fan engagement. Known as the creator of Spotify playlists, Nick transformed how millions of listeners discover music and helped launch the careers of countless artists. After Spotify acquired his company, Nick became Spotify's global head of music, where he played a pivotal role in shaping the platform's success. Now, as the co-founder of TSX Entertainment, Nick is redefining entertainment in Times Square and beyond, merging cutting-edge technology with fan-driven experiences. He's also the author, and I encourage people to get this. We'll have the link in the show notes for the book, Fan-Powered Futures, Shaping the Future of Spotify at Times Square Through Fan Innovation. And this is, in the book, he explores how fandom is reshaping industries and creating cultural movements. If you want to learn more about Nick, visit nickholmster.com. Like I said, those will be in the show notes. Let's dive into a fascinating conversation about the future of music, technology, blockchain, and how fans are driving the next wave of innovation. Thanks for coming on TCast Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Asan. Appreciate it.
Yes, I want to kind of get into a little bit, everybody's always fascinated. It's a global, in probably 220 plus countries, Spotify. I kind of want to get into the beginning, if you don't mind, because we're a data company, data startup, and a lot of the people that listen to us, and we're seeing AI and machine learning and all these different things. What was the beginning when you guys revolutionized music with these personalized playlists? What kind of, like, as far as, and you don't have to get too technical, but the data and AI, were you guys using AI back then? What was the innovation behind the playlist?
I think there was a lot. It's interesting because like when I joined the company, it was with like 2013, and Spotify started then to do a couple of personalized playlists like Discover Weekly, and there was a couple of ideas around it. And they have run a lot of advanced machine learning algorithms around this. But what they ended up going with was actually like a collaborating filter models, which basically said like if two tracks was next to each other in a user's playlist, they had some kind of relationship. So that was the starting point to do it. What happens over time and when it started to become more sophisticated was that when I came in and started to building out the editorial team and the playlist, it also what really made a big difference that Daniel, the CEO and founder of Spotify, always wanted was to take like what humans are really good at, like understand the culture of the track, attribute it with a lot of information, and then use data to kind of work with that and improve it all the time. So I think what we saw was that we built a systems where editors globally, like tagged up these playlist tracks, whatever it was, with a lot of other kind of data that couldn't be brought in from the traditional kind of listen pattern. And then when we started to combine them, like that's where the magic happening. So I think if you look at it today, the most successful playlist on Spotify is something that is referred to algoritmic. And they are not for every use case, but basically, if I tell you something like songs to sing in a car, everybody knows what that means, but it might be very different in taste. So in that case, editors, instead of curating like 40 songs, they maybe curate a pool of 1,000 tracks. And then the machine learning knows how your taste profile looks like and picks not only the tracks, but also like take the artist that reflects your kind of intention and priming you for that experience. And then, of course, over time, since I left, AI and more advanced kind of algorithms and stuff like that comes in. So I think they can track a lot of more data. I think right now, to be honest, I think they have so much data. So it's almost like complicated to really navigate the portion of what to use and what's performing best.
I could imagine. And I know you were on the global aspects of things, and I want to bring this into your expertise when it comes to emerging artists. And I know now, even on my Spotify, introducing me Bad Bunny last week, the new album came out. And so that's I think almost number one here in the United States. How did you introduce like balanced user preferences with introducing emerging artists? And then how did you introduce global artists into different countries?
Yeah, it's a good thing. So what we did, if we go this, because I think in a way you need to have a hypothesis and you basically need to have like a manual view how this should be working. When we were there, we had a strategy because we built out editorial team to really understand the different domestic market because they were extremely different. And we also wanted to find a way how different editors in different regions to work with others and introduce these artists over the borders. And now it's a really like a global market. The way we looked at it at that time was really try to create like a playlist syndicate where we had what we call like a lot of beta playlists, different bays, how we can introduce new artists in the right context and get feedback from users. Basically saying like, we believe that this, user has this taste and this new record, could be a new artist that they like. And how can we introduce that and get data? So basically the way we did it was like getting it out as much as possible at that time, and then slowly move it up to it and see where the groove hits, like, and if you were successful, we always had like the equivalent to the today's top hits in the US in every country, which was no genres, was like the most popular song. So you could actually travel through that. And then when data come into this and starting, it's a little about trying to uh, refine that by having data and AI doing a lot of that work. The biggest challenge, I must say, is the amount of music that's being released on the platform today. There's a probably 80% of it, to be honest, is probably shit that needs to be some way filtered out. Could be cover versions, could be upload or public domain copyrights that people want to make money off, the Johnny Cash of the world. So there's like a gamification of the system on one side. That there's to emerging artists. I get this question a lot of things, stepping forward moving forward a little bit quickly. But I think the challenge today is that it is way more difficult today for an emerging artist to rely on a platform like Spotify to have them being the one for the distribution. To the point, what I think is important to everybody to know is that Spotify is also tracking a lot of external data points. So I think it's up to every artist to really do the first, I used to say like the first 1,000 hardcore fans, that's your job. That's going to reflect back into the system. And that's going to mean that you're going to be ranked in a different way when you start to get this number. So you have to really, if you're a brand new emerging artist and you want to release a record, I think getting the first 1,000 fans, that's your job, and then trying to really engage them. It will spill over and eventually you will see it starting to reflect. But Spotify is way more mirror of consumption today than actually a driver of new music. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, so it's the same with YouTube. The algorithm, it's they're seeing what watch time is, how many likes are on it, and then they decide based off engagement, because that's what they want more than anything. I imagine Spotify the same way, whether to promote that video or not. So it's probably pretty close to the same thing, I would imagine.
Absolutely. I think it's another thing to think about, which I think has made it a little bit more tricky. My hypothesis around when we created Tunigo from the beginning was this is the early, the mid 2000s, piracy is about to kill, the music industry in the Nordic countries and a lot of people trying to solve the problem. And when I started to see Spotify in 2007, something like that, in early betas and see like this is the solution, the first thing that piqued my mind was that like it's a completely different industry. It means like it's not a transactional, depending on how much money you have. And I always said, like, keep in mind that in the old music industry, maybe 25% of the people that listen to music actually went into records. They looked them as like a very specialist kind of culture, and maybe you went to a bigger kind of department store and buy your gift for Christmas, and stuff like that. So the hypothesis was like, if these people now that used to listen to radio and all the other things that was used to get curated is coming in and you combine basically radio and record stores, like eventually the majority wants some kind of guidance. And it's going to be pretty impossible to navigate because Spotify from the beginning had a very, we say like hipster kind of music buff kind of core audience that created a playlist and stuff like that. But then when the other one started, we started to see like the lean back consumption increase. I don't know the numbers today, but I would assume it's super high. Most people come into the app, they find something, and they press play and they don't interact. And here's where the problem starts. So if you have like a really high percentage of lean back experience, you're not going to get a lot of the input data from people like saving and stuff like that. So how do you get into that system? That was easier when it was a little bit leaning forward mentality because you get more data. So since I haven't been inside for a few years right now, I think that is also what emerging artists see as a huge, huge problem, because it's very difficult to move it. But when you're once in a system, it amplifies and rewards you. But the trick is always going to be like, how do I get in there?
Yeah, and then also there's only what, probably two really ways to interact with it to know what's happening. Maybe one would be if you listen to it and how long you listen to it, and then the other would be if you add it to a favorites.
Yeah, I think there's more sophisticated than that. We always looked at the absolute biggest kind of data point you can get is someone listen to a song, save it, and play it again. It's kind of replays.
Right.
That's the absolute highest, like, and then you had everything from like sharing, saving, adding playlists, skipping, all this different. But the absolute what you were looking for was really people that saved it to the collection and replayed it. That was the high. That really, gain a lot of weight in that distribution mechanism. So there was like different, like points depending on what people did. The first thing is, of course, if people skip something pretty tough, kind of, they say like, this is not my kind of music. I don't want to give it not even 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a pretty, what was a wrong fit. But then when people listen to it, there's also like levels of what happens after people have listened to the track. And that is, you have to also, what we started to do when the cohorts become too big was really to hone into what we felt was the people that was leading, the pioneers of music, and look more at their data point to guide us in our distribution because the other ones was passive listeners. So
Right.
and that was something that we tested, in a lot of different ways. How can we, if the majority of people is not giving us basic data points back, how can we zoom in? And then the way we used was really like, who played songs early that became hits. So we ran a lot to really find out, like, in all these users without knowing their name, who are these people that seem to always pick up the next big songs. And they become like our expert genre cohorts, like that we weigh in, like decision.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know I kind of want to shift a little bit because, and in your book, you have a lot with the artist fan relationships, and I know there's technology blockchain. I want to get into what do you think is, because not only do you have streaming royalties, but you kind of have this artist rewards and how they connect. What are you seeing the future of that happening, and how is that happening? Artist fan relationships.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so the main reason I wrote a book is that I think people know it, but don't really take it as serious as they should. Is that today, in this very engagement model, social media, like where old school traditional media is out in the door. There's no campfires anymore. Your fans is really who represent you out there. Like they are way more important than ever. It's the saying like the fans hire you, but they fire you. Like they see themselves that your brand is kind of an extension of their brand. So they expect certain things about your being authentic, your storytelling. Like you have to be really true today to make it work. So what I'm saying is that, like, in the old days, like people were happy if they just went to concert. Like, and if you had a photo, like a real photo, you close to a celebrity, that was something that was never heard about. You put it in your office and it was like a big deal. Today, it's expecting to get a selfie with Taylor Swift or whatever their favorite artist is. So they have increased the barrier of what they think the reward mechanism is. What I mean with that is that in the same way as we have seen influencers on social media, we have the big influencers that like post things to their followers and networks and endorse or promote stuff. And then you see more network of smaller influencers that help with the same thing. For me, it's like the biggest, most important kind of marketeer resources an artist has is their fans. So I think what it comes down to, and what I am interested in, is two things. First of all, like artists have basically taken control of their image and their rights. So if you look at all the big artists today, it's not traditional record deal, it's licensing deal. They control the content, which also makes them responsible for actually marketing their music. So in my world, in the old world, like record labels probably spent 20% of marketing. So I can totally see a future where artists whoever it is goes out and say like, I gotta give, X amount of my revenues back to my fans. Not as fiat currency, but like in a tracking way. How can they do the things they do today, get rewarded, and basically get their hands on things that they want to have, exclusive merch, like reduce access to tickets that they never can get because they buy these. So I think what I believe is that we're going to see a shift happening. In some way, there needs to be a reward mechanism that the new generation of fans are buying into. And I think that is also at the same time a tremendous opportunity, not only for artists, but I think for any brands. I think we talked about when we grew up, Apple was a fandom, maybe not in the same way. Tesla is definitely a fandom. You're looking at pop culture brand and they have the same kind of relationship, these kind of companies that artists and fans have.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So fandom as currency, are you looking at it in the sense of, like, when you say currency, what is that to you?
Think about
Besides just dollar bills.
Yeah, so let's say that we do an example, like Artist X is releasing an album. They have 5 million monthly listeners on Spotify. They want to give back to their fans in some way. They, instead of doing all this marketing, they want to have authentic, genuine. So they want artists to really talk about it, not lie about it. So they give them a bunch of tasks and assets they can use and tell their own story with. And in some way, you connect that to be able to track it if you're using a blockchain, whatever you do, because you need to make sure. So the way I vision this is in a very simple way is that you have a pool that is reflecting a value. In fiat currency, that value might not be worth so much, but if you translate, if you print merch, if you do different things that doesn't have that base value on it, the value for these fans will be higher. And then you basically need to put that out, and these fans will, of course, you need to gamify it. You need to have leaderboards. I think these fans want to be recognized. So how you do it is like they want to feel like they are part of it. And then they can like take these points that is tracked somewhere, and exchange them to whatever they think is. And that is what I think the circle. Because when that happens, it's going to be like a revenue, like a flywheel that increase, the reach and more people come in and so on and so on. So that is what I see that the future of marketing will be really about solving the mechanism of the reward system in some way with the fans that already is want to tell that story, want to be on the barriers and lead that conversations with new kind of fans. I also think the community aspect is super strong. I think that it's very clear people are lonelier today, and this is a way to belong to something. You have seen that it's very clear. Like on take always keep Matt and Taylor, but there's a bunch of these artists, and even like the Koreans and the K-pop. Is that it's interesting to see how much community and exchange between fans happening at these events, and how they're looking forward to it, how they experience this, and how they talk about it. They keep having that conversation, which I think is a really good thing today. So somewhere there, Jason, is where I think we need to find a new platform and solution.
Yeah, and not only do we have blockchain, NFTs, all those different things that they can use, we have AI. And I know AI generated music is kind of gaining traction right now, especially in the EDM genre. Um, how do you see it coexisting with traditional artistry? What are you seeing? What are you seeing with AI?
Yeah, I mean, like it's we all know that it's very difficult and it moves very quickly. The way I look, it's tools, it's superpowers, And I think for anyone, the thing about AI that so far as well is like it's all about the input, like and what you get, which means that I think is an incredible time saver. It feels like I have an expert next to me. I suddenly like feel like the smartest person in the room because I have access to it. And that helped me, like with the vision I have. If I don't have any direction and I have nothing to really ask about, like nothing's gonna happen. I'm not a big believer in, and I'm gonna come to the point why. I don't think, like, and there's a lot of reasons around like AI for actually producing music. Like, I mean, true, like, give me a great song that sounds like Drake. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's two challenges there. Like these kind of algorithms needs to learn from something. Like, and I think in some way there needs to be compensation depending because as well as me, like models needs to listen to stuff to learn, and they use what they listen to, which means that all these copyright owners that has been involved in that needs to get something back if you actually train on these things. The second thing is that I think fans want to know real people, like, and be authentic, at least as of now. We don't know what in the future. But I think to being, authentic and storytelling and stuff like that, if you start faking it too much and it's not you, I think it will come back and bite you in the back. So for now, it gives you a superpower, and you can achieve so much more in a shorter period of time. So you maybe not need the 5 people team to help you do the things that you needed like a few years ago, and AI can help you with that. So that's how I see it. If you ask me that question in 5 years, it would probably be another answer. But the way I look at it right now, it's an incredible like tool that will be used in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I'm looking at it like, and you've seen this, with concerts and stuff like that, but especially like sporting events, Netflix going into it, and you're seeing like ratings going through the roof. Live events, I think, as AI gets bigger, bigger, and bigger, it's just going to be more valuable.
Yeah.
So for me, I kind of have a positive aspect with traditional artistry, because I think somebody playing the guitar, because when something's super cheap and easy to make, which would be AI music, or if it's like a cheap Louis Vuitton ripoff purse, that you could go, you live in New York, you can go buy one of those right now, and they're $50 or whatever. But people are looking at them, seeing if it's really fake or not. It kind of looks a little fake. So I think that's the same with music. I think it's going to actually, my opinion, just my opinion, I think it's going to pump up concerts, live events, and that community experience, because you're not going to be able to have that. And no one wants fake. You know what I mean?
Yes. I
If that
completely,
makes sense.
yeah. And I think that's what we see as well. Like I always say, like, why do people work? Like, why do they spend all the time doing there? What are they using their money for? And I think it's more true than ever, especially going through the whole COVID things. Like, people want to have experiences. Like, they want to experience things in real. I think there's a second screen mentality. Like, if they figure it out, like, if I can't be and watch something, what is the second best thing? But I think there's a really interesting thing to think about. Live concerts have never worked on TV. I mean, like, never. Only like big moments, like if it's like Feed the World or there, you know what I mean? Like the
Right.
and they kind of things that people tune in because you need to tune in. But the fact of that you record a show, I mean, you can say that Taylor Swift with her era kind of movie that she did worked pretty well. But it's an exception. Most of concert videos cannot recreate that emotional connection in any way, which I think is a challenge and the blessing of being real. And I also believe that maybe even music will get a little bit more undressed, a little bit back to the MTV Unplugged era again, where it is a meritocracy, and people that are really talented want to show that off, and they want to show it live, and they want to like express that. I think that's what we got. It's always a reaction, in the end. And I agree with you. I think AI music is great for elevators or public places where people don't care about it. But when you want to get emotional connection, like, it has to be real. And that's not gonna change. Like, people will use AI tool to create these things, but not like give me a hit song. Like, I don't know what that means, to be honest. There's so many other senses all that we bring in when we make a decision if we like something.
Yeah, I wanna shift gears. I have 3 more questions, and then we'll be done. But I want to talk about, because there's a stigma, especially when you talk to younger people about, and for our company, we're a data company, and we're empowering people to be able to sell their data to companies and it be consensual. We have a data marketplace, and so ethics is huge for us. That's why we want people to take empowerment over their own data. When you see ethics in the music industry, I'm not talking the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, but even now, what are some of the ethical considerations, not just with AI, but in general, do you think the music industry needs to address in this new era of everybody being so transparent?
It's a great point. It's a great point. And I agree with it. I think that's what I try to say a little bit on music as well, and AI in general, and who owns what. I mean, we all know that it's a very difficult thing to do, but of course, a streaming service will be incredible, perfect to build on a blockchain. It will take away so much, And the biggest problem with the music industry is all the money that disappears just in the system that's being
Mhm.
that's being untracked, and there's a lot of other reasons for why it's not getting, like the fair payment. I mean, a lot of people, you know, bring up Spotify for paying artists. I have such a difficulty to understand that conversation, because I think people missing on two different things. They look at one place where they see like the value of the public company Spotify over here, and then they look at like what they get paid per stream. But you have to go back and say like, okay, how does Spotify do? You're like, yeah, they basically pay back 70% of all the money they bring in, and the other 30% should cover everything. And it was just last year Spotify showed profit, which means that someone has been putting in enormous amount of money into the company to pay all these artists and songwriters over a period that is actually from 2006. So
Mm.
you have to get things right. And the other things I would say is that it's never been more money in the music industry than now. But on the other hand, it's never been more competition than now. Which means that like there's a lot of artists that people don't know about. There are mid-tier artists that owns their rights or on Spotify, and they generate money months after months after year and just continue building catalog. So when people trying to take a cost of like a retail album, which by the way, people keep forgetting that like an average royalty was 8%, which was a fraction. And even conversation when I have with artists as legacy big artists saying like, yeah, like we were one of the biggest band in the world, but that major owns us and our royalty is 15%. So even if the album was released, 25 years ago, and now it becomes a massive success, 85% of all the money they're bringing in is going to that record label, even if they, you know, broke even millions of years ago, I was about to say. So there's two things. I think if the agreement in the music industry would have been built in a way they should have, like people, they revert the rights after a certain time because there was no really value. I mean, streaming created the value of back catalog. Can you imagine how much money that will come back to all these amazing artists that, believe they can never make money out of their recordings, and suddenly like they would just, I think the conversation about Spotify would have been completely different. And that is what I
Mhm.
think the mismatch on it. But I keep saying that like an AI solution where that kind of transaction happens when you're listening would be incredible. I just think it's going to take a lot of time to get it.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I also think a lot of people are misrepresenting. They look at a YouTube or they look at something like that and they see Justin Bieber and what happened on that. Yeah. It is so hard to go viral, on whatever platform it is. But if you make a song on the weekend and you post it on Spotify and then you're expecting, I mean, there's millions of people, probably billions doing that same thing that you're doing
Yeah.
globally.
And I also think that like, I don't know why people believe that if I'm saying like, I'm going to release a record, I want to be an artist, it doesn't mean that you have the right to earn your living from it. I don't know how that became.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know, like it would be crazy if I say like, hey, I want to play football. I want to play, like in Super Bowl next year. I'm gonna go to a training camp and see if I can get like a position in Chiefs. Like people will never come up with that. But when it comes to music industry, everybody has a tendency to believe that they are like the next big thing. And if it doesn't deliver, they blame the system. And but there's so many stories, like when you actually looking under the hood and starting to see all the people that were not able, we will never have like a Billie Eilish and Ed Sheeran without streaming. Not a chance, like they will not go through that kind of lens that record labels believe was this week's taste, whatever it was. And there was a very few gatekeepers in the old. So I always say to people like, you blame me the system right now. I can tell you like, you will not be even able to get into a recording studio, like today. So it's always interesting to see. And I mean, we are in a world where people trolling everything, and it's of course very easy to attack the biggest player in the room and play that story around conversations. But I'm also surprised that people are not more familiar around like how the Spotify payouts being distributed, because I think there's a lot of question that should be asked there instead of asking Spotify. Because the other version would have been that we have been like what happened at that time, a full piracy world where music has lost its value and it will just be spreading all over there like water in some way. And I don't think anybody want to be in that system. But we can't stop technology. It's never gonna work. It's never will. We just need to governances. And I think we have an incredible governance today. Because keep in mind, Jason, any song today is available everywhere. You can get it for free. So what
Right.
people are paying for today is really the interface and the usability and the community around it. It's not the music. You can get it for free everywhere. But you're not willing to put in that work anymore. Like you want it to work and you want it to be integrated in your life. And it's a pretty, I think you can charge way, way more for music than $10 a month,
Of course.
and I think it's one of these few things in life that I think if you remove it from people, it will really impact it.
Yeah, 100%. Our $10 and there's more ads or something to help pay. But last question, and this is kind of a big picture one. I know you've probably thought of this before, but I always like to ask kind of a big picture question at the end. If you could design the ideal tech-driven music platform today, what would you include? What features? How would you empower both fans and artists? If you had unlimited budget and you could just do it.
I would probably, build it on a blockchain structure in some ways. At least get, the input information right. And you know that everybody, because I think in every systems, it's going to be about fairness. And if that is by the core, it's going to work. The second thing, if that happens, it becomes so much easier to really share, these revenues and build incentives for fans and gamify this. And when I'm saying gamify, meaning it in a positive way where fans feel like they're part of it, and then I think the missing point right today is that, and Spotify would probably never give that to artists, is they cannot communicate with their fans. They need to go to other social media platforms and have the conversation saying, hey, come over here and listen. And I think it's very important that there's a direct conversation and that you own that. Like it has to be yours. That's the problem, that on social media, you don't own anything. And to be honest, you don't even own it on Spotify. You have monthly listeners, but you don't really control the data. So I think in the most fair version is that there's a company somewhere that's going to charge you a fee for running this in the same way. And whatever that is, if that's 20 or 30%, whatever it takes to build that. But I think that the output for everyone in the system, including the fans, will look completely different. It will be fairer, it will be more actual, like real numbers, and it will take away a lot of these conversations that happens today. So I think you need to really build in a protocol that works, that everybody buys into. But you also, I think the fans need to be able to have these real conversations on the platform.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Nick. I appreciate you being on TCast. We'll have the links of your book and your website below. This is hugely important. I mean, what's more important than art and music? I mean, that's instrumental as being human. That from the beginning, we started making noise and dancing around fires. So this is how we do it now. And so I appreciate you being on this futuristic type design work. And we're going to put, like I said, we're going to put your book, and I encourage everyone to hop on Amazon and grab it and buy it and check your website. Is there anything new you got going on or anything that you can leave with our audience?
I'm actually doing a couple of other interesting projects. So hopefully we can pick it up. And I think one of my biggest obsession right now is really to think through like how do you create a platform today that's primarily not focusing on getting artists there to drive fans, but the other way around. What is the incentives to get fans on a platform so artists want to come there? I think that is the biggest problem today, that everybody's depending on the artists to drive their business. And I think you just need to come up with, how do you attract fans? Because when
Yes.
fans, like artists will follow. So it's about creating these assets that artists are excited about. And I just want to finalize by saying that a lot of people believe that artists is driven by money. They are truly not. They didn't go into music because of money. They got into music because of their expression. They care more about like their look, their feeling, their story, their fans and stuff like that. That's that's the driver. If you start in a different way with them and say, like, come over here and sell to your fans, I don't even know what, like, you can make more money out of super fans. That makes no sense for me. Super fans is not equal to dollars. Like, these are the most engaged fans. So I think you need to revisit that strategy.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you for your work. And once again, we'll have everything in the show notes for everyone.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason.